Hello, this is Gloomy Sunday, and once again, I will be sharing spooky stories that will send shivers down your thorny spine. Without further ado, let's begin tonight's creepy, spooky, and sometimes outlandish array of tales. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. Nestrelda had always been a little different. She had an uncanny connection with felines, and often found herself thinking like a cat. One full moon night, while wandering through the woods, she stumbled upon a mysterious ritual being conducted by witches. She observed them quietly, but she accidentally stepped on a twig which caught the witch's attentions. She immediately ran to flee from the scene, but the next thing she knew, she was transforming into a sleek, black cat. Her hands morphed into paws, her ears grew pointed, and her eyes turned a piercing green. At first, Nestrelda was terrified. But as she explored her new feline body, she discovered a freedom she'd never known before. She prowled the streets, chasing mice and exploring hidden alleys. It was exhilarating, until she met him. His name was Pepito, a handsome male cat with eyes like sapphires. They met in a deserted courtyard, and it was as if the universe had conspired to bring them together. They would spend hours grooming each other, playing, and curled up beside each other, purring in harmony. Their love was fierce and all-consuming. Nestrelda had never felt so alive, so happy. But fate had other plans. One fateful evening, as they were strolling through the neighborhood, a car sped around the corner, and Pepito was struck. Nestrelda watched in horror as her beloved lay motionless on the pavement. She meowed and meowed, tears streaming down her face as she cradled his lifeless body. And then, something strange happened. As she wailed, her body began to change. Her paws transformed back into hands, her ears shrunk, and her eyes returned to their human form. Nestrelda stood up, stunned, and gazed at her reflection in a nearby window. She was human again. But her sorrow was far from over. She mourned Pepitot's passing, feeling lost and alone without her feline companion. Days turned into weeks, and Nestrelda couldn't shake off the feeling of emptiness. That was when she saw him, a handsome boy with piercing blue eyes, walking through the park. There was something about him that drew her in, something familiar. As their eyes met, Nestrelda felt an inexplicable jolt. The boy's name was Augusto, and they quickly discovered a deep connection. They would talk for hours, sharing stories and laughter. Nestrelda couldn't explain it, but she felt like she'd known him before. One night, as they sat together on a bench, Augusto turned to her and said,
"I feel like I have lived before. Like I have loved before."
Nestrelda's heart skipped a beat. She knew exactly what he meant. And then, it hit her, the realization that sent shivers down her spine. Augusto was Pepito, reincarnated. The soul of her beloved cat had found its way into this handsome boy's body. As the truth dawned on them, Nestrelda and Augusto shared a passionate kiss, their love transcending species and death itself. They knew that their bond was stronger than any curse, any tragedy. They were meant to be together, in any form, in any life. From that day on, they roamed the streets, hand in hand, their love a beacon of hope in the dark. And whenever they looked up at the full moon, they would whisper a silent prayer, thanking the universe for giving them a second chance at happiness, and whispering, "Forever, my love." Another strange but romantic story. But I am looking for something spookier. I wonder if this next story will fit the bill. In the small, unremarkable town of Bangalore, India, an unsettling legend whispered through the streets that every few generations, Bangalore would bear witness to the rise of a cursed child. The signs were always the same: strange birthmarks, an affinity for the shadows, and a foulness that crept around them like a malignant fog. Aditi Avani was just such a child. Aditi's parents had sought to escape the town's oppressive curse. They moved away when she was little, hoping to shield her from the shadowy tales that hung over Bangalore like a storm cloud. But on the day Aditi turned 16, a peculiar letter arrived, weathered and sealed with wax, that called her back to the town of her birth. Unable to resist the pull of her heritage, she returned, unknowingly stepping into the heart of a dark prophecy. From the moment she arrived, the air felt thicker, laden with secrets. The townsfolk stared at her with a mix of pity and fear. Whispers followed her like ghosts as she walked down the creaking wooden sidewalks. They warned her of the impending darkness, hinting at her family's storied past, but Aditi wanted only to discover who she was and who she might become, free from the whispers of those she considered superstitious. The first sign of her peculiar affliction crept upon her at the old family estate, an imposing manor overrun with vines and shadows. As she stood in front of the crumbling facade, a wave of nausea washed over her. Her stomach churned as if alive, and she stumbled towards the nearest shrubbery, clutching her abdomen.
What is happening with me?
She gasped, just before she doubled over, feeling the universe within her erupt. Out came frogs, green and slick, their bodies glistening in the sparse sunlight. Their chorus of croaks mingled with the retching sounds that escaped her lips. She fell back, horrified, as they hopped away into the weeds, leaving her gasping for breath. Aditi tried to ignore it, attributing it to nerves, but the next few days grew worse. Alone in the manor, she awoke nightly to nightmarish convulsions. With each violent heave, rats, their beady eyes glinting in the dark, poured forth. They scurried and clawed against her skin, disappearing into the shadows of her childhood home. The pungent scent of decay filled the air in those frantic moments, staining her senses. It wasn't long before the insects joined the cacophony. Flies buzzed, shrieking from her throat. Ants, swarming her legs, crawled out as though drawn to her flesh. Soon, the manor walls dripped with life, the chittering of wings and the pulsating heartbeat of the dark elements within her. Each time she expelled these creatures, it felt like the town cursed her anew, a physical manifestation of the town's wrath against her bloodline. Despair settled over her like a damp cloak. In her worst moments, she sought to understand the family secret that lurked in the shadows, waiting to be revealed. A late-night visit to the town library unearthed the truth. Centuries ago, a curse was placed on the Avani lineage by a scorned witch, wronged by greed and betrayal. What had once begun as vengeance was now bound to each succeeding generation. A terrible inheritance that could only be lifted by the ultimate sacrifice. The townsfolk grew restless. Even children were warned away from her. They spoke of her as a vessel for malice, a harbinger of doom. With every incident of her violent expulsion, the town faced the wrath of nature. The crops withered, the rivers dried, and shadows lengthened beyond the twilight. Desperate, Aditi sought the village elder, a woman steeped in the old traditions and the memories of the curse. She listened with weary eyes and confirmed Aditi's darkest fears. To break the curse, the blood of the innocent would be required. A sacrifice to appease the unjust spirits bound to the Avani name. With a heavy heart, Aditi made her choice. In the moonlit woods just beyond the town, she gathered the townspeople, the children she had once played with, drawing upon her newfound connection to her accursed lineage. She would turn their fear into understanding. Standing before them, she summoned the pain from deep within to unleash an unholy torrent. The grotesque spectacle of frogs, rats, and insects filled the clearing, a swirling maelstrom of nature's fury, stinging and biting the air thick with tension. In that chaotic moment, she named her sacrifice not only the children but herself as well.
Let us mend this broken chain!
She roared, her voice intertwining with the creatures swirling around her. As the night deepened, a sudden stillness blanketed the woods. An eerie calm settled over Bangalore. The creatures, obedient to her command, retreated, leaving only silence. And in the heart of that silence, the curse lifted. No more would the Avani bear the weight of wrath. Yet, as morning light broke over the horizon, Aditi Avani was never found again. The townsfolk whispered that she'd become one with the woods, absorbed into the very fabric of the earth, the last of her bloodline entwined with the legacy of Bangalore. And as for the town, it would continue to breathe, haunted by the shadows of a girl who once vomited horrors, her memory forever entangled with the legends of Bangalore. I hope you enjoyed our spooky and strange stories. Join us next time for more. Take care and boo-bye.